Hello viewers, today I will share with you a fascinating study titled Honeypot Allocation for Cyber Deception in Dynamic Tactical Networks, a game theory approach. This research explores a strategic method to strengthen our cyber defense mechanism, particularly in dynamic tactical networks through the use of honeypots and game theory. This is the table of content that we will be following throughout the presentation. Let us move forward. What are honeypots? Cybersecurity is tough because of sneaky threats like APT attacks on important sectors like government and companies. These attackers can go unnoticed for a long time. It's also hard to protect mobile network from being sudden attack like DOS, especially in IoT and tactical networks, where attackers move around a lot. To trick attackers and catch them, we use cyber deception like settings traps with honeypots. But even our networks like SDN have trouble growing and staying safe, especially in cloud and IT setups. Tactical networks have extra issues because they are always moving. So we need smart tricks to fool attackers and keep an eye on them. Think of it like old war tricks, but in cyber world. Honeypots are like spies gathering information on attackers. So to stay safe, we have to be smart and use tricky tactics to fight off new threats. Honeypots are vital tools in cyber deception, fooling attackers and draining their resources. There are two types: low interaction, which mimic specific services and are easier to set up but easier for attackers to spot, and high interaction, which are more complex but harder for attackers to detect. Securing tactical networks is tough because they are always on the move, making standard defense strategies less effective. To tackle this, we have developed a new approach using dynamic attack graphs and game theory to model network mobility. By anticipating changes in network connectivity, we can strategically place honeypots on certain positions to deceive the attackers. This model, based on two-player Markov game, considers node values and potential network changes, leading to more effective deception techniques. Testing has shown significant improvement in thwarting attacks, especially against less informed attackers. Moving forward to see the research contributions, it basically lies in designing a dynamic game between defenders and attackers, which is aimed at devising effective cyber deception techniques against lateral movement attacks. This involves leveraging attack graphs that encompasses vulnerabilities, node importance, and network topology, enabling us to strengthening place defenses. Additionally, we have developed an RA accounting for potential communication loss among the nodes. In this predictive model, they have incorporated this foresight into the transition matrix of Markov cave model, allowing them to determine stationary Nash equilibrium strategies across various network states. This numerical analysis demonstrates the effectiveness of cyber deception and showcases the rapid convergence of this game solver, particularly in the presence of network mobility. They have further evaluated the approach under different level of information symmetry between the players and assessed its scalability under various scenarios. First, we'll discuss about the attack graphs. Attacks modeling techniques like attack graphs offer a way to visualize cyber attacks on computer network. However, generating these graphs for large network is challenging due to scalability issues. Our study focuses on a simplified version of attack graphs where node represent vulnerable host and edges represent specific attack paths. While this model may not cover every vulnerability, it helps illustrate potential attack routes that attackers could exploit. This understanding is crucial for developing effective strategy for allocating honeypots. It's worth noting that while attack graphs may not directly incorporate mobility, they can adapt them effectively to model mobility in tactical networks. In essence, the attack graph serves as a roadmap for potential cyber attacks, highlighting vulnerable points in the network. By simplifying these attacks and the graphs and focusing on key vulnerabilities, we can develop better strategies for defending against attacks such as deploying honeypots strategically, while attack graph may not initially account for network mobility. We can modify them to accommodate dynamic network conditions, making them invaluable tools in cybersecurity planning and defense. Now we'll look at some of the deception techniques that are used. In cybersecurity research, there has been a lot of focus on using game theory for defensive deception. Researchers like Schlenker and Van have looked into how defenders can deception to trick attackers, even if the attackers know about it. They have used fancy theories like hypergame theory to simulate different perspective in uncertain situations. Other researchers like Syed and Zhu have explored using game theory to deal with specific threats like zero-day vulnerability and how to use deception to protect against them. In this paper, they are building on this work by looking at how deception can be used when networks are constantly changing. Talking about network deception, computer network deception research aims to improve how we use deception to defend against cyber threats. For an example, Liu and Xiang, they talk about manipulating network information to lead attackers and strengthen network security. They also explore how software-defined networking can be used for defensive deception, and they further discusses using network deception to gather information about potential threats. Network deception in the realm of cybersecurity involves deploying various techniques and strategies and technologies to mislead or deceive potential attackers within a computer network. This could include spoofing IP addresses, which can be used creating fake user accounts or fabricating the system logs and events. They can be used by flooding the network with misleading information, and defenders can obscure genuine assets and activities, making it harder for the attacker to discern their true objective. Now we'll look at what the attack graph model is. Here we are studying a specific type of attack where the attacker first gathers all the information about the network, like how it is set up, what each part does, and where it is vulnerable. To show this, we are using a tweaked version of a model called attack graph, which help us map out these details. To represent these features, we adopt a modified version of the attack graph model denoted as G1, which has parameters n, e, theta, and nu. Then we'll talk about node edge connectivity. In this system network, node represent devices interconnected by edges, depicting their accessibility and network connectivity. Then we have node categorization. The defender categorizes node based on their importance role in the network. Entry node E are where the attacker initiates the attack, while target node T are the objective attackers to compromise. The rest are intermediate nodes that attackers must compromise as they move from an entry point to a target. Each node represents a device in network with vulnerability that attackers can exploit to reach other nodes. In this model, nodes can be of different types denoted by and or. If a node is marked and, it means attackers need to control all the nodes before it takes over that node. If it's marked downwards, attackers only need to control one of the previous nodes to control it. Nodes can also be mobile, meaning they can be removed from the network due to various reasons like hardware failure or security concerns. Both the defender and attackers can see these changes in node mobility and they can update their strategies accordingly. You can also see the graph at the bottom of the page where A1, A2, A3 represents the nodes and the one in the blue lines are the edges. As we can see here, figure 1 illustrates a 7 node tree attack where with one entry node 1 for intermediate nodes 2, 3, 4, and 6 and two target nodes 5 and 7. There is one vulnerable path to reach target node 7, while three path leads to target nodes. Due to node mobility, node 4 and 6 might lose communication in the future, reducing the available attack path to reach target node 5 to just 2. It's crucial for the defender to consider this future mobility information when allocating honeypot initially. Our model highlights the importance of factoring in the network's future changes while we focuses on nodes leaving the network in this example. Our model is versatile enough to accommodate any future topology adjustments such as adding or removing connection or nodes. Dynamic tactical networks benefit from adapting honeypot placements, and the optimal deception strategies outmaneuver adversaries by using game theoretic model, or we can say the attack graphs. Now the defender model. In this scenario, the defender strategically positions a set of honeypots along the network edges, leading to the target nodes to trick the attacker. The budget for these honeypots is represented as H, so the defender's option for action, called the action space, consists of different possible ways to allocate these honeypots. Each action in action space is a binary vector indicating whether a honeypot is placed on each edge. However, the defender also incurs a cost CD for each installed honeypot. So they claim to balance their strategies by minimizing this cost while maximizing the number of honeypots placed. The defender's goal is to reduce the attacker's success by placing honeypots on edges that attract the attacker while keeping the overall cost of this strategy low. Now let us move forward to the attack model. In this scenario, the defender knows that the attacker has targeted and gathered important information about the network before launching the attack. So the attacker is now targeting specific nodes and is choosing the best path to reach these nodes. The attacker option for action, called the action space, consists of different possible attack paths from an entry node to a target node. The attacker faces a trade-off because going through important node increases their chances of success but also increases their overall attack cost. Now we'll see what the reward system in the game is. The reward function captures the balance between the defender and attacker's strategies. For each profile played for the action space and defender space, the defender receives a reward of RD, which is represented by AD and AA, and the attacker gets a reward RA. In this zero sum game, the total reward for both players equals zero. Each node in the network is assigned a value Vi, reflecting its importance. The defender benefits more by protecting high-valued nodes with honeypots, while the attacker gains more by attacking high-valued nodes by avoiding these honeypots. So the attacker's objective is to aim to maximize their reward by targeting high-valued nodes while evading honeypots and maximizing the impact of the attack. The defender's reward is calculated as the formula that is shown on the screen, which can be calculated by getting the summation of the action space. So before moving to the Nash equilibrium, we'll discuss some things about dynamic game system. The game evolves over time with varying network connectivity and changes in vulnerabilities. We focus primarily on the network's mobility, considering how it changes over time. To analyze this evolution comprehensively, we use a Markov game framework where each state of the game captures all necessary information to generate a honeypot allocation strategy. The defender adjusts along based on the new network topology, aiming to maximize long-term rewards. In this dynamic game setup denoted as pi, two player interact with a set of state S representing different network configurations. The transition probability function P determines the likelihood of moving from one state to another. Each player aims to maximize their long-term expected payoff by strategically choosing actions within their action space. A, the reward function R, which evaluates the immediate reward for each state transition with terminal state marking the end of possible future transitions where player receives immediate action rewards. Now we'll discuss about the Nash equilibrium strategy in this game. Now let us use XIS to represent the probability that the defender chooses the ith action at state S and YJS for the probability that the attacker chooses the jth action at state S. These actions come from their available action spaces AD for the defender and AA for the attacker. A stochastic stationary policy denoted as pi D for the defender and pi A for the attacker is defined over all states. This policy indicates the probability of choosing actions at each space. Both players aims to maximize their expected reward by maximizing the theta function at each state. For the defender, the main goal is to maximize the expected reward over time. Under certain stationary policies for defense and attack, pi d and pi a respectively, the expected sum of discounted reward starting from an initial state s at time t is equal to 0 can be calculated. Now we'll talk about the analysis of the study based on the research paper. In the research paper, they carefully analyzed the game theoretic model to make sure it works well and converges effectively and scales up smoothly. Firstly, they checked that the system extended theta learning algorithm, which leads to the best possible strategies, known as Nash equilibrium, and that it works consistently across different network setups. Secondly, they tested how well the method performs by comparing how successful attackers are under different deception strategies like random or short-sighted ones versus the strategies based on our new predictive model. They also looked at both full and simplified versions of the game. Lastly, they looked at how well the algorithm handles larger networks by comparing its performance in different settings. To understand how network changes affect the model, they used the network X library to create attack graphs based on certain criteria. They identified specific groups of starting and target nodes, assigning random values to the nodes in between. The network had 20 nodes with 3 starting nodes and 3 target nodes, as seen in figure 2. For this network, the defender had 10 options for placing honeypots, like 612 or 511, which means placing honeypots on the certain page of the nodes. The nodes can be seen on the previous slides, which is easier. Lastly, they looked at how well the algorithm handles larger network by comparing its performance in different settings, along with the changes in the network. This paper, they presented a dynamic game model involving a defender and an attacker to assess the effectiveness of cyber deception against lateral move attacks amidst network changes. The approach is incorporated nodes removal and predictive modeling to determine optimal strategies, showing reductions in attack impact across various network scenarios, including larger networks. Furthermore, the effectiveness of the proposed approach is evaluated across different network configuration, including larger network, showcasing its adaptability and scalability by leveraging dynamic game theory. The paper provides insights into how cyber deception can be mitigated using the risk of lateral move attacks amidst changing network conditions. Then, expanding the research, they considered parallelizing node removal for faster processing and explored strategies to make network more dynamic and unpredictable for attackers. Additionally, they aimed to address scenarios with imperfect network information and investigated advanced techniques like deep Q learning for handling more complex games. And in this dynamic game setup, they denoted by two-player interacted within a set of state S representing different network configuration. The transition probability function P determines the likelihood of moving from one state to another. Each player aimed to maximize their long-term expected payoff by strategically choosing the action within their action space. Hence, this was the reward system that we saw and how the game was modeled to achieve higher payoff for the defender. The defender strategically positioned a set of honeypots along the network edges, leading to the target nodes to trick the attacker. The budget for these honeypots was represented as H, so the defender's option for carrying, called the action phase, consists of different possible ways to allocate these honeypots. However, the defender also incurred a cost CD for each installed honeypot, so they aim to balance their strategies by minimizing their cost and maximizing the number of honeypots placed. The defender's goal was to reduce the attacker's success by placing honeypots on edges that attracted the attacker while keeping the overall cost of their strategy low. Moving forward, expanding the research, we also considered parallelizing node removal for faster processing and exploring strategies to make network more dynamic and unpredictable for attackers. Additionally, they aimed to address scenarios with imperfect network information and investigated addresses like deep Q learning for handling more complex games. And deploying honeypots effectively is not straightforward, especially in dynamic environment where resources are limited and threats are constantly changing. This is where game theory comes into play. The paper underscores the importance of adopting proactive cyber defense measures such as cyber deception and leveraging game theory. Hence, it is possible to use the game theory model to solve honeypot defender problem as a defender. They are often employed by cyber criminals to gain unauthorized access to sensitive information and compromise systems or carrying fraudulent activities. And the research paper we also discussed today, like which possesses a game theoretic approach to allocate honeypots in dynamic tactical networks. So the key insights were strategic placement. By strategically placing honeypots, they influence the behavior of the attacker. Dynamic adaptation, the allocation of honeypots needs to be dynamic, responding to changes in dynamic threat and network conditions. They also talked about the robustness, the proposed approach ensuring robustness against adaptive attackers who might attempt to exploit weakness. They also talked about the cost efficiency. Through optimization, they can achieve better resource utilization, minimizing unnecessary expenditure while maximizing the impact of other defense. In conclusion, the integration of honeypot allocation and game theory represented a compromising avenue for strengthening cyber defense in dynamic tactical networks. By leveraging these advanced techniques, they can stay one step ahead ahead of cyber adversaries, safeguarding critical assets and operations. These are the references that I have used to make this presentation successful. So I am Vipin Singh. My student ID is 40258628. I am a student of INSE 6630, and this was the paper presentation for the same. Thank you so much.